All right, there we are. Welcome everybody to our first Honors College Colloquium of the spring semester. It is very rainy and wet outside, and apparently it's going to be icy and snowy later this week, so delightful. But I'm pleased you all made it here either in person or over Zoom. My name is Craig McCashin. I'm the Dean of the Honors College here at A&M Texarkana, and I am very, very excited that our presenter this first go around is Austin. Over here, you can't see him right now because he's off camera. Austin Perry, who is a biology student here at A&M, and an old hand at presenting, has presented, I think, last couple of semesters for us. Yeah. So today he's going to be talking, as you can see on the screen, the ecology and conservation of the Prairie Massasauga.
Yeah, close.
Awesome. I'm close enough. I appreciate that. States Kansas. With a section on Bowie County, Texas. All right, exciting. There should be some time for questions at the end. Again, if you are here in person, please sign in. If you're here on Zoom, go ahead and drop your name in the chat, unless your name is readily apparent from your Zoom moniker. And I will get out of the way. And if you don't mind letting people in when they pop into Zoom, I would appreciate it. Thank you, sir.
All right, so this arrives as we're going with, well, I guess McCashin's not going, but for honors, we're going to the great one of the honors councils.
Great Plains Honors Council.
There you go.
Yeah, no worries.
We're going to one of those, so I figured I have all this research I could present, and I want to present something relatively novel here. So I've also decided, instead of just talking about Kansas, given that we are in Bowie County. All right. So if you were at my last presentation, you'll notice this is identical because I looked at my presentations, like I want something similar, and I looked at the first few slides and went, all of these are already rattlesnakes. If it ain't great, don't fix it. So we're just going to come back here. Again, we have the Western mountain-neck rattlesnakes. What finds these pit vipers are the pits on the right side.
Oh, yeah, all right. I should have logged in on my other account so I could let people in.
It's all right. Anyway, so they have these little membranes up there. These allow thermal transfer between the ion membranes, and they can sense about a 600th of a degree Fahrenheit and change. So they are very easily able to tell the difference between surroundings, between biological entities, even other cold-blooded, quote unquote, animals. They can sense they're just barely warmer than their surroundings. So bring them off to the side again. Here's more of what I just talked about. This allows them to sort of see it. Of course, we can't understand ourselves how we see it, but we believe that it's routed to the optic tectum, which is similar to our processing center in our own brain as mammals. And this should allow them to see sort of an overlay of an actual thermal image. Of course, this also helps them to see at night, which is when a lot of these hunt flight birds, as I'll talk about later, are crepuscular. They usually are more active in the morning and at dusk, and usually not during the height of the day or the low of the morning. So this is a prairie rattlesnake. I do want to point out something here with a pen real quick. If you look over here at its scale, so again, we've all talked about the shape of the head. Obviously, is sort of not a guaranteed distinguishing factor between vipers and other colubrids and other snakes. But something big here is if you notice these large scales right here, and they all come here, and there's these little smaller scales right here. So they have this defined head right here, and then these larger scales. If I grab my notes real quick, these can be your supraoculars and rattlesnakes, and a lot of actually most of just rattlesnakes as far as they go. These are going to be very large and defined. With your more basal or older genuses snakes, like your Achistodons, your copperheads, cottonmouths, and then Sistris, which this presentation is over. These will be smaller, and that's important. Later, I'll show you how to differentiate between these rattlesnakes and the rattlesnakes I'm talking about. Anyways, so I just showed over more of what I've been saying. So you can see the rough sort of triangular head. This is due to a lot of the muscles that they have in the head. A lot more so than these older snakes. So we're going to get this out of the way here. And more or less the same thing I presented, at least just to start off with for those who weren't here last time. So you have these compressive glandulae muscles and these larger muscles on the back of the head, which are the adductor muscles, which allow them to actually open their mouth. Snakes don't unhinge their mouth. The jaw is not fused to the skull or like ours where it's attached to muscles like mastoids, it is completely unattached. It never unhinges, just never attached. I'm gonna go ahead and give some way to show you the actual parts of the muscles here. So these are the venom glands out front. If you've ever seen someone milk a snake for venom, they'll usually maybe inject some or none to start off with. If you stimulate those glands, you will get them to produce all of their venom. These are again like compressor glandulae. These are the muscles that will push forward into the venom glands to squeeze them, to squeeze the venom through the tubes into the veins. And back here again, you have those adductor mandibulae muscle group, which again helps them to open, close their mouth and move muscles out of the way while they're eating. So this one's just an African bush viper. I figured this was a good picture I'd taken about a year or so ago, just to show off fangs. This is a viper, and we'll get into why the fangs are a lot more different. So originally, these fangs evolved around 35, 25 million years ago and are Selenium glyphus. These were the last ones because the rear fang culverts, the Physioglyphus, your hognose snakes, your boom slings, they have fangs in the back of their mouth, very tiny. They look just like the other teeth, and it's more they have venom in their saliva. And these rear fangs allow it to get a deeper puncture to get that saliva into a wound. As I mentioned, they're hollow on the inside. There's a canal that connects to the venom gland, to the compressor glandulae muscles, and all of that is just a coated system. So the Selenium glyphus, unlike the front face fang, the Pteroglyphus, I think cobras, coral snakes, they have fangs that are just like actual fangs. They're larger, they connect the venom glands, except they're fixed, like our teeth. I don't know anyone that can fold their teeth. I wouldn't trust anyone that can fold their teeth. But as far as we go, we can't do it. Neither can cobras. Those things are always erected as compared to the Selenium glyphus things on vipers. They're folded flat against the mouth, and the snake can choose when to extend them. In this case, this snake was trying to act big and bad, and he was just showing off his mouth to scare me, but never actually erected his fangs. And the two muscles that they use is the phenopterygoid and the dorsal constrictor if they decide to sort of unhinge it from the roof of their mouth. So this is going over the Crotalus and Sistris again. So all of the pit vipers swing down in Asia and the Americas, and our Crotalus snakes are only going to be found in America up here. There are about 19 species. I'm not going over all of them because I really don't have the time. But some of your best known are going to be your timber rattlesnake. You're going to have the speckled rattlesnake, which is more of a arid and western species. The eastern diamondback, which you can't talk about without the western diamondback. And I've also included the black-tailed rattlesnake. But there are many species, and I think there's an argument there's upwards of 60 subspecies. Crotalus are the largest genus of Crotalinae, New World pit vipers in general. Very successful, very well distributed. Oh, some of the mineral.
Thank you.
So now the cool guys, we actually have the Eastern Massasauga. This is one that is federally threatened. It's in a little worse place than what we're going to talk about today, the Western Massasauga. This is more, I'll get into some terribly drawn range maps in a little bit because I was not able to secure the rights to use actual range maps. These are more found around the North and the Great Lakes region. We have the Western Massasauga, more Midwest and Western states, and it does extend into Texas. Close to Dallas and down towards Austin and Brownsville, and those sort of areas. You also have the pygmy rattlesnake. That's a snake we have here in Bowie County that extends all the way out to the East Coast with 3 subspecies. So again, here in Bowie County, we just have the one Sistris miliaris, which is the pygmy rattlesnake related to the Massasaugas. And again, terrible range map, but I did what I could. So you have this comes up here through East Texas and Louisiana. It moves off the East Coast. And if you notice, there's a huge dip here. Seems to be with the random, but if you know geography, it's because the Mississippi River is right there. Snakes and a lot of reptiles are not very agile, and that's basically a term that just means how an organism is able to move or disperse itself throughout an environment. If you want an organism's flagella, you can look to your left and right because we are everywhere. We have gone everywhere. Probably has a little bit of earth that we haven't stepped on. Anyway, so this moves on to the Kansas, where they have Trigominus, which is the Western Massasauga, the focus of this one. This entire range was just immense. I kept finding new areas that had been added to, and I had to freeze all them on a computer. So anyways, this is just the entire range of the Western Massasauga. And if you look at this little divider, that's where we split the two subspecies, the Prairie Massasauga and the Desert Massasauga. And again, up here in the Great Lakes region, we have the Eastern Massasauga. So if we take them and we mix them together, you have the Western Massasauga, the Eastern Massasauga, and the pygmy rattlesnake. See, they cover a fair bit of the U.S. This is the fun one. Okay, so I spent a long time trying to figure out how these snakes are related. So you start off with Crotalinae, some ancient ancestor of all of these snakes, these vipers in North America. The first genus to split off is Chistrodon. They were the oldest genus, the cottonmouths, the copperheads. They're closely related to all the other two genuses of rattlesnakes, but they were able to split off a lot earlier and become their own thing. At some point, Sistris is the second oldest genus. They're older than Crotalus, normal rattlesnakes, quote, quote. I tried to represent to where, from what we can tell from genetics, they diverged a little earlier from an ancestor from Sistris, but were never actually related to Sistris and did not come from them. They're completely separate. So the first Sistris that we knew emerged was Sistris miliaris, the pygmy rattlesnake. It really shows because it earns its name. I mean, these snakes are under a foot usually. And then we have this split up here, very recently between the Eastern Massasauga and the Western Massasauga and its possible subspecies. So for these two, again, this is what I was talking about with the scale arrangement. Up here, as I mentioned, 1 second, let me get the pen. These supraoculars very big on the Crotalus rattlesnakes, but if you notice Sistris, while they are there and they're big, they're not arranged like the other scales. These prefrontal scales up here, frontals, supraoculars, and the parietals, they just form this large sort of flower-shaped plate. Where this also does it in the Chistrodon, which again shows that these are much older than regular rattlesnakes. And if you look up here at a normal Crotalus genus rattlesnake, they do not do that. They come at a sharp point. That's something to note too. Crotalus have a much pointier head, more of that triangle shape, where Massasaugas, they sort of round off a lot more. But yeah, you notice instead of making these giant plates, it just comes out to be these tiny little plates, a big bunch of them. And that's one of the ways you can't tell the differences. Any of you probably won't get close enough to want to tell the difference looking at scales, so there are other ways that we'll get to here in a second. Get rid of this real quick. All right, let's get on our way. So this is our local species. This is Sistris miliaris strickeri. This is the western pygmy rattlesnake. So it's one of the three subspecies. You have Sistris miliaris barbori. That's the dusky pygmy. You found that more into eastern Louisiana and into Florida. You also have the Carolina pygmy rattlesnake, which is more on the east coast. Compared to again, what's used for the rattlesnake, big snake, big rattles. Sisters, if you just notice, they have tiny, tiny little rattles. So it's so small that most people can't even hear them. And they're usually in this species under a foot in size. They, unlike a lot of rattlesnakes and Cetus massasaugas, they prefer much wetter habitat. So in this case, they're going to prefer those forests, and they prefer those riparians. So basically, floodplains or areas around rivers, wetlands. They prefer those wetter ecosystems. As mentioned, they are crepuscular. They prefer to come out at dawn and dusk, except for the summer. When it gets hot, they will pretty much only come out at night. And just like any other snake, they ruminate in winter. They do not eat the entire winter until spring. So this is mistaken identity. These are snakes that easily makes up. I get it because these pygmy rattlesnakes are several inches and these timber rattlesnakes are several feet. I can easily mix them up too. So there, of course, there's actual differences. Of course, this gets hard when the timber rattlesnake is more juvenile and they're similar in length. There's some small things, but first thing is that if you notice this timber rattlesnake, he has this sort of dark bronze line going all the way down its back. And even in different regions, it seems to be pretty solid that it remains that way. If you notice this sister snake, it also has good length, but it stops at every dot. It never goes through those. I've looked at several species, subspecies within this. It never seems to go through. And the big thing we're going to use to tell the later Massasaugas from the rattlesnakes is if you notice, they have these bands across the eyes. A lot of our vipers have some sort of band across their eye. And the sistrus snake, you will notice that it just seems to go straight and never really touch the jaw. If it does, it gets under the jaw. Whereas with this timber rattlesnake, it starts at the eye and it quickly drops off to intersect the jaw. That's another one. And last with the timbers, at least in this case, compared to the pygmies you'll notice, as you will notice with other Massasaugas, they just have little dots everywhere. Whereas the pygmy rattlesnake, it's more of a solid sort of chevron shape. If you notice, that generally wraps around the entire body, sometimes including the belly as well. All right. So now we're moving on to Kansas. This is our main focus with the Prairie Massasauga. This is a subspecies of the Western Massasauga. Possibly, there's an argument with that. These are what some people are starting to call a polytypic phenotype, which basically just means it's all sort of spread over. It looks different, but it's not a different snake. It's still the same thing. You go all the way from Chihuahuas to St. Bernards, it's still a dog. Just because they look different doesn't make them different species. But again, it's a big argument whether or not there are two subspecies or if they just look different. Again, this is Western. So the other subspecies that I wish I'd found a picture of, but I never got around to. Just take this, turn it brown, and sort of tan, and you've got a desert Massasauga. Obviously, these live out west, which I'll show you more. Prefer more arid environments, while these prefer again more of your wetland and wet prairie environments. These are going to be larger than your more basal pygmy rattlesnakes. Instead of reaching about a foot, they'll get around a foot or two. Again, still much smaller than Crotalus rattlesnakes, which get several feet in length. As mentioned again, desert subspecies prefer the desert. The prairie prefers the fields, marshes, and the bottomland forests. So this one is where it gets difficult even for me. I spent about 2 hours trying to find the difference between the two, and there's not a lot on it. But if we use some of what we applied to the timber and the pygmy, we can point out some differences between, in this case, the Prairie Massasauga and the prairie rattlesnakes. Notice this is Cistrus and this is Crotalus. So if we notice the first thing again, you have this eye band that comes down, intersects the jaw, and keeps going, drops sharply. And under here, again, it sort of just gently goes down, stays, a little above the jaw and doesn't beat the jaw until about the back of the mouth opening. A couple more things. If you notice on his head, he has some patterns, but they're not quite all the way there. It's mostly blank on his head. Pretty much all Massasaugas, anything in citrus is going to keep those patterns on their head. They're going to have some very intense patterns on their head. They remind me of Pac-Man frogs. They can have all sorts of dots and colors on their head. And some people even call the pattern on top of their head that looks like Pac-Man. That's pretty much it for these two. Again, as I mentioned, these ones have larger superoccipital scales, and they have more of that point where if you notice the Massasauga, instead of having this sort of V shape that one has, it sort of just rounds off a lot more gently. And if you were to look up close at this species, again, you'd see that there's multiple larger plates, so those small sort of granular scales. Didn't get rid of my pen. All right. So I'm going to talk a little bit also about Kansas. I think it's important to understand Kansas to sort of understand where I'm going with these snakes conservation-wise. If you didn't know, Kansas City is up here. And the weirdest thing ever is Kansas City, it's sort of like Texarkana. It starts with Tex, but Arkansas is the bigger side. Kansas City is in Kansas, but Kansas City is also Missouri. And Kansas City, Missouri is like 3 times as large as Kansas City, Kansas. I don't know why, but I guess somebody decided to move to Missouri. So this is the eastern portion of the state. This is where you're going to find your tall grass prairie. And up here, sort of in the northeast, you have the deciduous and hickory forest up by northwest so of Kansas City. Again, you have more of those riparian sort of wetland ecosystems. There's just lakes and rivers all throughout it. And the main 4 species we have here, the big blue stem, the Indian grass, switchgrass, and little blue stem. As far as other wildlife, we have the white-tailed deer, bison, just a lot of, and most of the animals we have here, plus a few more, again, the bison and whatnot. This isn't the best picture, of course. I know it's called tall grass, but trust me, the grass gets a lot taller when you don't cut it. So as you can see, it's sort of a softer rolling landscape. You have some trees, presumably a creek running through this and down through there. So we move over to the central region of Kansas, the mixed grass prairie. The region is like tall grass and pretty much just this transition off into the west side. So what that's going to look like is, this isn't the best example. This is more central west. I'll get him in a second. And what you're going to start seeing is, as it dries out more, you have drier plants. You're going to have sagebrushes that are better adapted, especially over here in the middle towards the Arkansas and Cimarron River. So you have these sagebrushes right here. That is predominantly what is in that region. This is a different species than that found in the sagebrush steppe in the Midwest heading into Canada. But it is a very small, important region, especially for the eastern Massasauga populations. I mean, the westerns. And of course, the western is shortgrass prairies. You start long grass and you transition west of the state into those more deserty states like Utah and Colorado. You're going to start having shorter grass, more arid, just everything in general. Again, so here we go with the more sandy soil. We have those little fan palms and shorter grass. This is where you can find the desert Massasauga subspecies. And these two in the middle are going to be your Prairie Massasauga subspecies. So again, why did I pick these? What's the big deal about them? Well, the issue is that they are decently sensitive. Now they've gotten into a better place, especially with some of the things that Kansas has done. But the issue present is not that their populations are directly sensitive. I've heard from herpetologists in Kansas that there's tons of them out there. But the issue is they depend on riparian and wetland ecosystems a lot. It's their main dig. And if you know anything about wetlands, they are very sensitive. Once they are destroyed, they do not come back. And it is very easy to destroy them. It's as simple as removing a few beaver logs, and all of a sudden you've lost 200 acres of wetland. So the state wildlife protection plan, it is still currently listed as a species in need of conservation, and it is apparently secure in Kansas with some sensitive populations and areas, or they've been extirpated, basically locally extinct in some areas due to human conflict or loss of habitat in general. And actually, just in the country, it is more vulnerable, and especially in Missouri, is actually considered endangered, as there are very few populations due to Missouri having a lot more human construction along the west side, which has destroyed a lot of the wetland ecosystems. So swap some of what they want to do to help out the western and Prairie Massasaugas. Wetland habitat maintenance, again, if you can keep them alive and prevent them from going out, that'll keep them around. Once they go out again, it takes way too long to replace them. Not something you see, not something your kids or your grandkids or their grandkids would see. It theoretically takes hundreds of years for a wetland ecosystem to go back to how it originally was. The snake fungal disease, this is also one that's going around. As you have more and more biologists and more people walking around, sort of like if anyone fishes, you are warned to clean off your boat before you get out of the water and into another body of water. And this is because, in this case, you may walk around and pick up spores on your clothing. And if you drive 100 miles away into this new reserve and you start walking around, you could spread those spores to other animals. Another thing is, granted that Kansas is just farms, and I'm serious about it. I dropped a pin in Kansas on Google Maps. I don't know why it skipped like that. I didn't even touch it. Anyways, I dropped a pin in Kansas on Google Maps when I started this southeast, and I looked around, it was just farms everywhere. And I dropped it in the center of Kansas again, about 200 miles away, and I wasn't sure if I'd actually moved, and I did. It looks the same on most of it outside of that vegetation. So what they're going to work with is, since most of the state is farmland, they work with farmers to see what benefits they can have from cover crops for these animals. Another big one, well, I did mention that sandbrush, the sand sagebrush that occurs in the central region of the state, central south region. There's another sagebrush, big sagebrush. It isn't invasive. It is a native plant, but the stuff grows like weeds, and they are having a tough time. So they're getting to the point where they realize they cannot get rid of it. So they have to find a way. What benefits does it have? How can we either just control it from taking over everything else, and all of that. So it's important needs environmental education, just teaching people, and I think it's very important, even in this setting right now, to do so. There's a quote from Sir David Attenborough that I like. It says, "People are not going to care about conservation unless they think animals worthwhile. No one will protect what they don't care about. No one will care about what they've never experienced." I mean, most people think it's not terrible. But in 2005, Richard Love described his nature deficit disorder in his book, Last Child in the Woods, Saving Our Children from Nature Deficit Disorder. It's not an actual disorder. You can't find it in DSM-5. And everybody, from what I understand, sort of made fun of him. They're like, it's never going to happen. Nature's right there. The kids go playing it all the time. And of course, he was warning how technology like we have nowadays could alienate people from nature. I mean, surely he was talking about, my generation and a lot of you in Gen Z. It can't be that bad. You have a Gen Z talking to you. He just wrote this presentation, never been in Kansas, came up all this. Can't be that bad. Well, in 2019, British children were surveyed for Hoop, which is just a school survey app they answer in school. And they were just asked about the local animals, right? 83% of children 5 to 16 could not identify a bumblebee. They could not tell what it was. 82% of children 5 to 16 could not tell the difference between an oak leaf and other leaves. 79% of children aged 5 to 16 could not tell a woodpecker from other types of birds, and they just kept going. They could not differentiate these local species. 26% of all those surveyed children said they had little or no interest in anything to do with nature. So the issue we're running into is kids are unable to identify local animals. They do not care to do so. And then it's getting rough even with AI. I'm sure by some of those cute little AI videos, like the raccoons jumping on the trampolines or stuff like that. The issue with that is these kids cannot tell the difference. They get these false image of what an animal is supposed to be like in their head, more charming, more this, more that. And when they meet the animal, possibly, they get this, oh, this animal's nothing like, still don't know why it keeps doing that. I'm not even touching the mouse. They get this false impression of the animal, and that really hurts them in the long run. Because they're like, I watched this cool video of a possum laughing and rolling around, and now I'm seeing one. It looks scary and it hissed at me, and I don't want anything to do with them. Anyway, so that's close to the end of it. I will have one more ask y'all towards the end of it. So Brooke Nowell is a local snake keeper and taxidermist. She has some snakes that she's looking to photograph. I use some of these, like again, that bush viper, his blue and Celaris, Western Diamondback rattlesnake. You notice you can see my reflection on the glass. We can open the glass on small snakes. We don't open the glass on her. She will come after you. Again, I always try to preach that snakes are not aggressive. They're defensive. They have no reason to want to attack you. That's like us going and chasing down a grizzly bear. You'd have to be pretty dumb. You're not going to win that fight. So there's no reason for a snake to want to chase us. They know they would not win that fight. They do not know that when they bite us, it's going to kill us. That's just their instinct. And this is a speckled rattlesnake, and something nobody else has seen before. Some pictures I held on but never really used from her are her pygmy rattlesnake. These weren't the best photos. They had some scratchy screen, and the snake was not very pleased to see me. That's when I, first unlatched it and looked at it. And after this photo, it just kept hitting the glass, and I was just like, well, if you don't want to take photos, I'm sure. Anyways, these are some of my references in case anyone wants to go through them. A lot of photo references. And the last thing I ask of you is, for Kansas, I try to present some of this educational material. So at any point, if you could just fill up to a form, it literally takes 1 minute, and I'll leave those other questions. 1 minute of your time would really help me for data as far as education goes.
Okay. Thank you. First off, Austin. Well done. Being applause. And questions? I'm going to check the chat to see if we have any questions in the chat. Feel free to do the QR code whilst we wait. are all people's names. Excellent. So any questions from our audience?
What piqued your interest in snakes?
Oh, I remember as a kid, one of the first encounters with a snake was pretty terrible. I remember I walked outside in kindergarten, and right next to the door was a copperhead, and my teacher freaked out. She almost started crying. So I started crying. I mean, I'm 5 years old, and she's telling me that there's this terrible animal outside. And of course, I'm like, okay. And about a year goes on, and I get this like rebellious stuff. I'm like, but why is it terrible? She didn't tell me why it was terrible. She just told me it's terrible. So I went to the library and checked out every book they had on snakes. I read about them. I said, these are nothing like how people describe it. They're just doing their own thing, and they're very interesting. So it's always just been something there. And as I've gotten into college, I thought that herpetology might be an oversaturated field, and I realized it's not. There's a lot that can be done, and especially as I've moved away from more wildlife biology, more into environmental education and teaching people of all ages about these animals, I've realized that these more unappreciated animals, your snakes, your possums, raccoons, all these animals that are generally disregarded by people, I realize that there's a lot that we can teach people about their intrinsic values.
All right. Any other questions from anyone?
You talked about the rattlesnakes in Kansas and how they need to conserve the land. What about Texas? Do we have that same problem here?
For some part, yes. In Texas, the timber rattlesnake is federally protected. It's one of two. The Texas indigo snake is also federally protected. You could get a massive fine, like a 6-figure fine, or federal prison time if you kill one for no good reason. And good reason is there has to be no other way. Usually, if you see a snake, you could spray it with the hose, slap it with the broom, or just leave it alone. As soon as it notices you, it might freeze up. As soon as you're gone, it's like, I'm getting out of here. So in Texas, the issue is that I believe 98% of Texas is privately owned. We're the only state set up like that. Most of the state is mix of public land, utility land like farmlands, and some private land, whereas Texas is just pretty much all privately owned. The issue you run into that, especially with wildlife biologists, is this involves landowner permission to do basically anything, which while we have some wildlife population in some areas, you have to be able to go onto a landowner's land and say, hey, can I work on this land? And usually they say no. So the issue is we legally cannot do much about this. As a current, we could try to urge people to and try to educate them like now, but really it's down to what people do with their land. And a lot of the times it's not in the best interest of the snakes. So they are rapidly declining in population.
Any other questions or anything?
What was that second type of venom secretion? Like in one, the saliva, what was the thing?
Epistolipus. So that's going to be your rear fang culprits, again, like your hog noses and your boom slings. The fun thing about boom slings, they're one of the most venomous African snakes. But leading up to that, our experience, herpetologist experience in the late 50s and 60s, and before on with rear fang culprits, is it bites you, feels like a bee sting, but you'll be okay. So when they ran into the boom sling, and it was new to them, they sent it to, I don't remember his name, a guy in the States, and he analyzed the snake, and he was bit by the snake. And he thought, well, no one knows what it's like to get bit by, so let me analyze it. It probably won't be bad, it's just a rear fang culprit. 2 days later, he wrote in his journal, my head hurts, blood is coming out of my nose and eyes, and then the last thing he just wrote was head hurts, going to hospital, and he died a day later from severe internal hemorrhaging. So the boom slang remains the only dangerously venomous rear fang culprit. But yeah, rear fang culprit episcolitis is just those enlarged teeth in the back that allow the saliva to penetrate the injury.
What type of thing did the three that we talked about here?
So there's technically 4 types. You also have Epistolipus, which just means they do not have fangs. That's going to be 9% of your snakes. Your boas can have more teeth and stacked row teeth. Your colubrids, which usually just going to have a single row of small teeth. Selenocolipus, those are viper fangs. Those are folding fangs that are able to fold using muscles. And you have Pteroglyphus and cobras, sea snakes, mambas, coral snakes. They have actual fangs, but they are fixed. They do not fold at all. And that's a myth you actually hear about coral snakes, is that they must really chew on you. They don't. If that fang is able to penetrate skin, venom will be injected. And the thing about coral snake bites is it can take up to 2 days for symptoms to show.
Okay.
Is there a difference in spitting cobras?
From what I understand, no, spitting cobras, also from what I understand, are not real cobras in the real genus. There's 3 groups. You have an actual real cobra group. You have Heniophagia, which is your king cobras. They are not true cobras, but they exclusively cobras and other snakes. And I believe your spitting cobras and water cobras are in their own genus. But yeah, they are the same. They have fixed fangs. So what they'll do is they'll raise the roof of their mouth and force the venom out at a high velocity, spraying it. And from what I understand from research, they can actually calculate where they need to spray if the target is moving, how far they need to spray, sort of like a small little ballistic computer.
Dr. Murdoch?
Do the hospitals around here, most of the hospitals keep an anti-venom
Yeah.
vial or whatever?
So for all pit vipers, Cistrus, Crotalus, and Chistrodon, they are very closely related. They have more or less, they have different venoms. Some of them are more neurotoxic, myotoxic, cytotoxic, again, just in what the venom is meant to destroy. But as far as all of them goes, this is the best setup. It sucks being in any other country because there's such different things. Like Australia has a different anti-venom for the tigers and the king browns and everybody else. But for us, since they're closely related, we just use one anti-venom. Well, I guess 2, Crowfab and Anavat. If you get bit by what you believe is a viper, you do not need to spend time identifying the snake. Go to a hospital, and if they believe it is a viper, all the anti-venoms work. It doesn't matter if it's cottonmouth, a speckled rattlesnake, or a pygmy rattlesnake, or a Massasauga, they all work. As far as coral snakes, anti-venom is rare, but usually I believe the effects of the venom can be treated in a hospital using other methods.
Do you have a favorite
Snake.
I like the confidence a lot. I think they're real pretty snake. Me and one of our natives, very common. They're all neat, I think.
Okay, any final questions?
I have a question. How many times have you been bitten by a snake?
Many times. Especially the funny thing is usually the smaller snakes that are real bitey. There's like some snakes that I've picked up like ringnecks and brown snakes, and with a lot of reptiles, I wouldn't recommend going around picking up snakes. It's a terrible idea. A lot of reptiles, if you're really gentle, they don't mind. Of course, they're probably panicked and they're sort of just like, okay, I'm going to go with it. But for the most part, you pick them up and they're fine. And even like rat snakes and whatnot, if you're gentle with picking up a lot of reptiles and amphibians, they're fine. Except for frogs. I don't know what goes through a frog's head, but it can't be much because they are just, I don't know. I don't know how those things survive in the wild. I've seen them try to eat, they miss, they go 2 feet to the left when jumping, and you can pick them up and do anything with them, and they're not scared at all. But yeah, as far as being bit, I frequently find that water snakes and garter snakes love to bite, and for the most part, it's just a bite, get a little bit of blood, say no, and put them back.
Okay. And why do you think people don't educate themselves about snakes? Is it because we've only seen them in a fight or flight state?
I think there's a lot of reasons. Everybody wants to go off what mommy and daddy told them, or what grandpa and grandpa told them, because we say they must be right. They've lived that long and they seem so smart. So when daddy says, oh, the baby snakes have more venom, they're more deadly, that's not true. That's just what he's been told and passed on. A lot of what we hear about snakes is 90% is wrong. They, again, want nothing to do with us because they are absolutely terrified of us. They are not aggressive per se. They will defend themselves. They might make a short burst at you. They also might chase you because they want to get in your shadow, because they think your shadow is the way to get to you. As much as I love them, they're not that smart. I have to not give credit where credit is not due. So, yeah, I think people just really misunderstand them, and for some reason they just don't seem to like them. They love lizards. A lot of people love lizards, but you take the legs off a lizard and all of a sudden you hate it. I guess maybe it's just the way they move. Of course, there's several ways they move, but I guess something about them people don't like.
Okay. Any final questions? All right, in that case, let's thank Austin again. We'll go ahead and stop this recording, and we'll get it uploaded on our YouTube channel for all of you who follow us at TANUT Honors. I'm sure all of you are current subscribers. If you are not, I'll see those subscription numbers It's just a few minutes. Thank you. Anyway, thank you guys and thank you.
Boston.